What's going on, Nerd Army guys? Welcome to the newest episode of Nerds Memorized. Today we're going to continue with a new episode for our newest segment, Nerd Explorers. So this segment we go into deep dives into our favorite stories, favorite historical figures, true crime episodes, anything I really feel like exploring and jumping into that I find interesting and fun, I will be doing right here on this segment. Today is no exception. Today will be the first historical figure we're going to be touching on. Today we're going to talk about the Wright brothers. Yes, the first men to sustain flight on an airplane. Basically the inventors of the airplane. So let's dive right into this amazing pair of brothers and learn what we can. Here we go. First off, Orville Wright was born August 19th, 1871, while his brother Wilbur was actually born April 16th, 1867. These two brothers were two of 7 children. Their father was a traveling bishop of the Church of the United Brethren of Christ. After 12 different moves in their young lives, they would actually finally settle down in Dayton, Ohio. One day, their father would actually bring home a toy helicopter that was made from a model from a French aeronautical innovator. Wilbur and Orville were obsessed with this toy, its inner workings and its design. They would play with it like it was nobody's business. They would ultimately use the toy until it was broken, but the two boys would not settle for that. They would use the pieces and what was left and build one of their own. This would be the first time that these two boys had any interest in the field of aeronautics. So Wilbur would actually finish his 4 years of high school, but due to the final move that their family took back to Dayton, Ohio, where they had lived once before, he was not able to get his diploma. But an interesting fact, back in 1994, he was actually awarded his high school diploma posthumously on his 127th birthday, which is fucking crazy and awesome. During this time, he actually had a pretty gnarly accident. It was a hockey accident that knocked out his front teeth. This would actually cause him to withdraw within himself, being embarrassed to be around people and people to see him. And he'd kind of become a recluse for the next few years. Him staying home would actually give him time to spend with his dying mother who had tuberculosis. And he would sit there and take care of her while he was home. While at home, he also delved into his father's massive library and read quite a bit. Orville would go on to drop out of high school and start his own printing business in 1889. So with Wilbur's help, he would actually create their own printing press. And it seems like these two boys were growing and just living to innovate and just changing the way the world is no matter what direction they go. Now, Orville and Wilbur would work together and print their own newspaper. Their newsletter would actually come out weekly, and it was called the West Side News. Orville would retain the title of publisher, and Wilbur would be the editor. So they ran it like this for quite some time, and then eventually they would switch it over to a daily paper, but this only lasted for about 4 months. So the two brothers would remain in commercial printing for quite some time when they saw the huge craze that bicycles was beginning to have on the world. They decided to open up their own bike shop. They called it the Wright Cycle Exchange, where they did a lot of different things, including bicycle repairs. Eventually, the innovators came out within them and they saw a way to make their own bicycles and develop their own style of bikes. They would change the name of the company to the Wright Cycle Company. The Wright Cycle Company would help them fund some of their great ideas, including their passion to eventually take to the skies. Over the next decade, they would dream and design different layers and innovations in flight. In the mid-1890s, there was a man in Germany named Otto who would help take a big leap forward in aeronautics altogether by flying on a glider, giving himself the name the Flying Man. 1896 started off with Samuel Langley using steam powered on a glider to try to make the first steam powered flying machine. Then in Chicago, an engineer named Octave Chanute actually went on to try and test out many different types of gliders and how they flew in different conditions. Most of this testing was run off the coast of Lake Michigan. So Germany's Otto actually would take his glider out one last time, and in 1896 he crashed his glider and he died from his injuries from the crash. This is the point where the Wright brothers' research into gliders and flight really kicked up to another notch. In 1899, a British man flying a glider died in a crash as well, Percy. This is the point that this glider crash really made the Wright brothers realize that the glider needed to be a full point, single point control, and the person flying the glider needed to have full control. You didn't need to just cruise and hope for the best. The Wright brothers would kick into action and focus on that specific thought, giving the flyer complete control of the glider, and that's what they would focus on, and they got to work. Would have actually observed birds and see the way that their bodies would tilt, their wings would tilt when they went different directions, giving them an idea to build a glider based on the design of the way a bird's wings work. This would lead them to make their flying machine fully controllable. So they figured that when the wings were slightly warped, giving that little curvature to them, similar to a bird's wings who have an arching curvature to them, it allowed them to control the air itself, and tilts and everything would be able to control the way the wind and the glider would fly through the air. This had never been done. This was very innovative for the time. So at this time, Orville would actually contract typhoid fever, and he'd be down for months. Never did he stop thinking about what was going on, the wing warping, and the two of them got back to work once Orville recovered. So at this time, they kind of were still running the bicycle business, but decided to take a little bit of a back burner to it because flight was the future. And at this point, the government was actually giving out grants to people to try to make strides for manned flying vehicles, basically to make a plane for the first time. They were giving out grants for people who were going to make strides in aeronautics. So when they were going to test their flying machines, Dayton, Ohio was very flat, and they wanted something with a little better wind and a little bit of a different kind of layout to the land. So they contacted the Weather Bureau, and they told them that the best place they could do this would be Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Now, this is a sand-covered area, so if they did crash, it's a much softer crash than some hard-ass ground. So in 1900, they started running unmanned test flights. In 1901, they would take it and step it up even further, running 50 to 100 different test flights. But these results were not what they wanted. They wanted a man-controlled flight. So they got to work and they created a wind tunnel so they can test the way the wind reacts to the wings and see how it flows over the wings to really control the way that their machine would be able to fly through the air. So the third glider that they built had a full controlling rudder, and it worked. So now it's time to get an engine on this bad boy. So the Wright brothers got to work, and they worked with a man at the bicycle shop, and they decided to hire him to make them a combustion engine custom made to fit on this glider. This man's name was Charles Taylor. So at this point, this is when the first manned powered flights would actually happen. So the first flights would happen, but they would only last for about a minute. But this practice allowed them to hone their skills. And by 1905, they were able to sustain flight for a whopping 39 minutes. Holy shit. Public itself really did not even believe that manned flights could still even happen or even exist. So they started traveling around to all these different locations, doing demonstrations and proving to the public that this shit is real. It would work with different investors, including some French investors who would help them out in different designs. But in 1908, the U.S. government offered them $25,000 to be able to build a glider that can carry a pilot and a passenger and go up to 40 miles an hour. They were up for the challenge, and they got to work. 1908, September 17th, Orville goes up in the sky with a lieutenant from the military and is flying around with him, but ultimately he does crash. Orville is hurt extremely badly, and the lieutenant is killed in the crash. This would actually make Lieutenant Selfridge the first passenger to ever die in an airplane crash. Crazy, huh? The two guys' younger sister, Catherine, was actually a nurse and would nurse Orville back to health. But once he was all better, he would actually take his sister up on a flight with him. This meant the world to her because she had always looked up to the two of them. But ultimately, 1912, Wilbur would actually die with a battle with typhoid. So typhoid fever would eventually take him. Orville would actually go on to survive till 1948. He would actually die from a heart attack in 1948. But these two men changed the world as we know it. They made leaps and bounds in a field that no one even thought was possible. These guys changed the way we travel. Imagine if these guys never invented this plane. Would we have 747s? How would we get around the rest of the damn world, guys? This right here, just thinking about how much these two men, these two innovators, changed the world and the fate and the way we live today. Without planes, guys, we would never have international travel. We never have different things like that. So it would still take 3 fucking weeks to take a boat to Europe from the States. I mean, it was fucked up. But they did change the world for the better. Now, I've personally been to Washington, D.C. and been to the Air and Space Museum where you get to see the Kitty Hawk in person, and it is a beautiful thing. I'm a huge history buff, and that was one of my favorite things, being able to see the Kitty Hawk live in person, what the Wright brothers used to break the world's hold on keeping us on the ground and innovate flight for the future of America and the rest of the world, guys. This was a phenomenal jump forward in the human experiment, and these guys changed the world. So, guys, let me know what you guys thought about the Wright brothers and my breakdown of their amazing life. I know I jumped quickly through it, but they have so much going on. There's so many different sources you can judge just to get to know these amazing guys. But these guys, like I said, did change the world. Let me know what you guys thought about this segment down in the comments down below. If there's anyone else you'd like to see me jump into, whether it be historical figures, true crime, companies, whoever it may be. The Nintendo episode came out last week and it was great. And I'm really excited to move forward with more episodes, including more historical figures like the Wright brothers. Guys, let me know what you guys thought down in the comments below. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel to keep up with everything we do every week. And I will see you next time. All right. Peace out.